Black Doves is the latest show to be released on Netflix, and what a show it was. Considering this series was only 6 episodes long, it pulled me in, I got attached to the characters, and I then went on an explosive ride, to say the least. Focused on a black dove called Helen, we saw her lover Jason getting killed on the South Bank in London, which ended up connecting to corruption in government and a criminal organisation that was doing all that they could to acquire the very thing that he was connected to, a video recording of the murder of the Chinese ambassador. So with that, let's dive into this video and break down all that there was to take away from the show, and I'll also suggest if it's worth watching or not. Here is a review of Black Doves and the ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Let's break the ending down for the main characters. Helen. Helen was the main character that we followed in the show, and she was a black dove, which was essentially a spy, and she was married to Wallace, somebody who was in line to become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in the near future. However, whilst being tasked to be married to him and spy on him, she fell in love with somebody called Jason. This was the person that was killed right at the beginning of the show on the South Bank. Her whole point of wanting to find the video footage of what happened to the Chinese ambassador that was killed was so that she could find the person that was responsible for calling the hit on Jason, Philip and Maggie, because she wanted to get revenge. It was at the end of the series where we saw her in front of the Clarks, a family that were considered to be the head of an international crime organisation, where Alex, the boss, claimed that she didn't call the hit. It turned out that it was in fact Trent Clark, her son. He organised the taking out of Jason, Maggie and Philip because he wanted to prove to his mother that he could clean up his own mess and not be the disappointment that she thought he was. This was following him accidentally killing the Chinese ambassador. One of the main rules of being a black dove is that you don't tell people that you're part of the organisation because you end up being compromised. The punishment of spilling that information is death. And Helen spilled that very information to Jason because she loved and trusted him. She loved him to the point where they were going to run away together. The fact that he was killed was something that sat within her mind whilst she was on the quest of finding out who killed him. This was because she wanted to know why he was a person of interest. It turned out that Jason was an MI5 agent and he was tasked with finding out where the leaks from the government were coming from. Even though Helen told him who she was and that she was a spy, when he filed a report days before he was killed, he didn't put any information in there about who she was, other than the fact that she was a wife and a loving mother. So there was nothing to be suspicious of. This was something that showed her that he did truly love her, and that what they had was actually real. Something that she feared wasn't the case. The fact that he was also holding on to Helen's dead mother's lighter when he died also showed that he cared deeply for her. We knew that lighter was of great importance to Helen because she actually went back and got it on the night of her first mission as a black dove. With regards to her being married to Wallace, her life was about to change dramatically. Wallace was set to become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom due to the serving Prime Minister and the active government being involved in the cover-up of Ambassador Chen's death and being closely linked to the Clarks, a criminal organisation. So the PM was going to be standing down and Wallace was going to become Prime Minister, which meant that Helen would be in a 24/7 safeguarded house and she'd have access to all of the information that Reed could possibly use to her advantage because she'd be married to the most powerful man in the country and would be able to soak it up like a sponge. So in theory, Helen did get some kind of happy ending. She knew that she was actually loved by Jason and she was progressing. Sam. I actually found Sam's arc in this show to be the most interesting one to follow. He was an extremely complex individual that had a moral code, and he even killed his own father to become the person that he was in the present day. He was told that his first job would be the most difficult, and that was true, because everybody else that he killed after didn't mean as much to him. Sam owed Helen a massive favour for essentially saving Michael due to the repercussions of when he originally killed the Newman brothers but left Hector alive. This led Hector and the family to want to get revenge on Sam, so they went to his and Michael's home and they tried to kill him. This was the very thing that ruined his relationship and his chance of a happy life with the person that he loved most. Something which actually went full circle at the end of this series because Hector going to Michael's house again and confronting Sam, it was a moment which offered Sam a chance at a new life, rather than taking away from his current one like it did 8 years ago. Sam completed his favour to Helen when he was the person that pulled the trigger and killed Alex Clark and also Trent Clark for being responsible for Jason's death. meaning that he was going to be the very person that the Clark family would look to get revenge on. He did this for Helen because he swore to protect her, and he cared about her on a deep level, something which meant that it came at the cost of his own happiness. He knew that he couldn't be with Michael because his lifestyle would be the very thing that would always put him at risk. And as well, now that Michael had a daughter, it made it even more dangerous for Sam to be involved with them. Sam had this thing with looking people in the eyes before he killed them. This was because it was an extremely intimate thing to do to somebody, taking their life. This is why there was also a heavy focus on him looking everybody in the eyes, because he felt it was a window to the soul. He knew that even though he couldn't be with Michael, the fact that whenever he closed his eyes, he saw him, it showed that he was always going to be with him in one way or another. Sam gave Lenny Lyons an ultimatum at the end because he was no longer going to be working for her. If he believed that she wouldn't have killed him, he'd have let her live, but if he didn't, then he was going to kill her where she sat. Sam did let her live because I think he trusted her, and I trusted her with that too. I think she did actually care for Sam, and even though one of the first things was to not be sentimental, I believe they both were for each other, hence why he wasn't killed anytime sooner. Will there be a season 2? Well, I think there are a couple of things that make me feel like there could be a season 2 of the show. The first was that Cole Atwood said to Helen the last time that he saw her that he'd be seeing her around, something which felt like it was too perfect of a line to not insinuate that there was more on the horizon. And the second thing was that Sam had a lot of heat that was going to be heading his way following him killing both Trent and Alex Clark. Plus, he was also going to be working with Hector, so I feel that's definitely a story that could be explored. One other reason why there could be a second season as well is because Helen was set to become the Prime Minister's wife, which would open up even more information to be explored for the Black Doves. If the quality of the show were to be as good as the 6 episodes that we got, then I definitely welcome a second season of the show. There's definitely more story to explore. My review of the show. I was really impressed with Black Doves. Netflix doesn't quite hit with its shows as often as it used to, so when something good comes along, it definitely deserves to be shouted about, and this is one of those shows. It was only 6 episodes long, but I felt like they managed to tell the story in such a clear, engaging way that I was hooked at every breath and at the end of every episode. Not only was the story interesting, complex, but simple to follow at the same time, but the relationships that were within the show, especially between Helen and Reed, Sam and Lenny, and Helen and Sam, hey, even Sam and Williams, they just felt so fleshed out, convincing, and like they genuinely mattered. This wasn't a spy thriller that was reliant on a big reveal, as the reveal that happened was a character that we didn't even really know. It was more about the moral dilemmas that the characters had, the constant tension that was there, and the yearning to live some kind of normal life outside of the false identities that they had to live, as nobody could really know what anybody else did, so there was no sense of normality for them. I thought the incorporation of flashbacks in order to make the organizations more understandable and to also make the relationships of more meaning was a great way for the show to do it. It didn't take away from the present day timeline, and it complemented it really well. One thing that I thought was exciting to watch was the fight scenes that would often take place. They were choreographed really well, and they were also tense to watch. Watching Sam, Williams, and Helen just annihilate people with ease was comedic yet also epic at the same time. I haven't really seen Kiera Knightley in anything for a long while, but it was nice to see her back on our screens in something that was actually good. However, I would say that Ben Whishaw stole the show for me as Sam though. His delivery of the character was so smooth, and I felt the most emotionally attached to him because of the moral dilemmas that he faced and the consequences of his past actions being the very thing that meant that he was unhappy in the present day. I'd really recommend watching this show. It would make great Friday night viewing and it would see through the weekend perfectly. So this one is definitely worth a watch. So, there you have it. A review of Black Doves and the ending explained.